If you have sort of an outsider's view, it's much easier to sort of take a stance that kind of puts you on the outside because you're not really risking anything.
Jen serves as the CMO for Levi Strauss, and she's been at Levi's for over 20 years. She also grew up as an elite gymnast, and she published a book with a very long title, but I think it's worth sharing it because it tells all. Chalked Up: Inside Elite Gymnastics, Merciless Coaching, Overzealous Parents, Eating Disorders, and Elusive Olympic Dreams. And she followed that with the most recently produced and revolutionary Netflix film called Athlete A. We're excited to have Jen teach us a little bit more about how we can use our own voices for change. Welcome, Jen.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Jen, it's so nice to have you here. Thank you so much for doing this.
Yeah, absolutely. Nice to meet you.
It's a pleasure. Let's dig into that a little bit, into that intro. Give the audience some more context on your life experiences and point of view, which has led to the incredible work you're doing as CEO of Levi's.
Yeah, I'll give you the very short version of 51 years, which is I had an unusual childhood. I was an elite level gymnast. Didn't start out thinking that would happen when I started gymnastics at about 5 years old, but through some combination of sort of unnatural discipline and commitment and a degree of talent, I got there. I was on the national team for 8 years, and I was the national champion in 1986. Unfortunately, despite my successes, I left the sport pretty broken, physically, emotionally, all kinds of ways, which are detailed in the book. And it's really a result of the culture of coaching cruelty that is the dominant methodology, I would say, in the sport. So not every single coach, but way, way, way too many. It's so common that it's almost invisible. And
it's to your point, and I had it's the standard.
It is. It's the standard, and there are exceptions.
Always.
But it's the standard. And what I'm learning now is it's the standard around the world, and I'll explain that in a second. So, you know, I went to college. I, tried to figure my shit out. And it was challenging. You know, if you spend the better part of your sort of childhood being told that you're garbage, and you think you're garbage. You do, and you're told like, oh, it's just sort of tough coaching, or you can contain it here, but that's not how it works. It's insidious, and so at 19 or whenever it was when I left to go to college, I kind of didn't know who I was without the sport. I knew I couldn't do it anymore, but I also didn't know how to even decide what I wanted, and I didn't think very highly of myself. So that's a lifelong journey for everyone, but I was sort of starting at a deficit, I would say, and I, got to the age of almost 40 and was still really kind of struggling with these things, even though I had a career. I was at Levi's at that point and pretty successful, and I had a family, and I still kind of struggled with these things and the after effects. And so I sat down and I wrote a book more to just sort of like get it out and kind of make sense of it. I didn't really think it would be published. I mean, I wasn't an Olympian, I wasn't, but it was. And so I became kind of an early whistleblower who was sort of first person telling account of what the sport was like. And the world was not ready for it at the time. The blowback was pretty intense. But my confidence built as I continued to talk about it. And because by the way, God, I mean, I literally have goosebumps because not to the seriousness, but my whole career has been innovating what's the truth for the consumer versus what businesses have thought. And so when you just said that, it just resonated. I want people to hear this because it may help them go this route as well. Your confidence was building because you were getting, even though maybe the establishment was booing you, you were getting whispers from behind of keep going, this is right, you're helping me, right? I was. I mean, there were young women writing to me from gymnastics, but also dance and other sports, other endeavors that were like, this is my life. I understand. I feel less ashamed. Please, this is helping. Meanwhile, the public blowback was pretty intense, and even the sort of from the organization and the threats and veiled and not so veiled. But yeah, I was connecting with people, but I was still, I was just watching recently some clips from back in 2008 when I was on some shows. I was very hesitant. I'm much more direct now about, what I believe to be true. I would say things like, this is my experience. It's not meant to be an indictment of the sport. And, I was protecting myself to some extent because it was already so bad. But then as I became sort of at the forefront of sort of speaking up, that also kind of built my confidence. I was standing alone at first, but then there were more and more people. And then, of course, when the Nasser situation broke within USA Gymnastics, which for those that don't know, he was the USA Gymnastics team doctor, and he sexually abused over 500 athletes over the course of 30 years. I was already sort of embedded in that community of these younger gymnasts, and I knew their lawyer, and I had met in DC to sort of agitate for legislation. So I was very much sort of enmeshed in this already. So that's what led me to the film idea is, you know, I knew all the players, from the investigative journalist to the prosecuting attorney to the survivors themselves. And I felt like it was a story that could be told. I knew I couldn't direct it, but I knew I could produce it. So
what did you learn through that personal endeavor that has made you the leader you are now of one of the most iconic brands in the world?
Yeah, it's a great question. I have a very specific answer. I mean, Levi's is a brand that is sort of known historically, you know, since 1853. We were sort of created with this idea of profits through principles. I mean, Levi Strauss himself, the first profits he made, he gave to an orphanage. You know, we've taken tough stands on issues across the decades, whether it's integration of factories in the South before the law required it, or same-sex partner benefits in 1992. But I think for me, I always sort of was willing to kind of stand up to some extent. But before I wrote my book, I hid a lot of my sort of external pursuits from the workplace, because I think, and women do this, right? You don't have pictures of your kids, or this is, you know, going back a little bit.
Yes.
You don't want anyone to think that you have any sort of diversion from the task at hand. And so I didn't want to be up for a promotion and have somebody say, yeah, well, she really wants to be a writer, so let's not consider her. But then I was on Good Morning America, and I was on HBO Real Sports, and you can't really hide it anymore. And it had the opposite effect, which was people thought I was outspoken and values driven and more creative and more intense and more leader, all these things. And so it kind of freed me to just put it all out there and to just like bring my full self and my full energy to work. And so that has really come into play as the CMO, which I have been for 7 years, in leading our sort of values-based initiatives and really taking a stand around vote and gun safety. And I'm not afraid anymore. It's not going to be as bad as the blowback was, you know, for my book. So whatever, I'm just going to say it, and we'll see where we get.
Especially when you're on the right side of history.
Yes, but it doesn't, you know what, it's easy to say that when you have people standing with you. It's a little scarier when you think you are, but you're the only one saying it.
But, and I'm sure you feel this, once you do it once, it gets easier the second. And, you know, I continue to think about, you know, I was an immigrant. I was born in the Soviet Union. I'm 44. So my country was the bad guys growing up. Right. I was an atrocious student. Like, all I had was no, which just made innovating so easy. I'm like, the system doesn't like me anyway. This is easy.
No, it's an interesting point. I think if you have sort of an outsider's view, it's much easier to sort of take a stance that kind of puts you on the outside, because you're not really risking anything, and you already are sort of, and I feel like it's interesting.
I'm sorry to interrupt. It's really easy to not be scared of losing when you've already lost.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. And I think, you know, because I grew up in this world, it was like, this is the way you do it. This is how you have to do it. And then I sort of stepped out of it, and I was like, wait a minute, that's not true. Everything I was told is false. It gave me this sort of outsider's perspective that I think often immigrants have, right? You're growing up in the Soviet Union, you're told this is how it has to be. You come here and you're like, wait a minute, it's not like that. The values are different, the process, everything's different. And so I feel like I got that from the sport. It's hard to imagine how intensely different my childhood was. You know, I was training 8 hours a day by the time I was 9 years old, you know, crazy shit like that. And so, you know, I don't have memories of school. I don't really have memories of friends. It was just gymnastics, and that was all that mattered. And I loved it until I didn't, because
that's the way it played out. Jen, let me ask you a question on that front. So I love competition, like just adore it. And like business has been such an incredible outlet for me, and creativity has. Do you kind of, I'm just listening to you. I'm like, oh, I'm really dying to know what she thinks about this. Do you kind of enjoy marketing from the standpoint of knowing that sometimes, even though you desperately thought it was going to work and everyone's going to think it's so cool, the consumer didn't react? And do you, in a weird way, does that fulfill any part of your competitive spirit?
That's an interesting question. I don't think that's the part I like about marketing. I'll tell you what the part is, but I mean, I am.
Do you like competition? Do you like competition?
I do. I like competition. Yeah. I'm not a believer, even though and speaking out now about the film, and there's a lot of press I'm doing, it might sort of take away that I'm anti-sport. I'm not, but I want sport that values the athlete and the child first, and the sort of mental. I want sport that kind of does what it's supposed to do, which is build kind of physical well-being integrated with mental well-being, and doesn't sort of sacrifice children for money and medals. That's what I don't want. And I think losing, to your point, is a really important aspect of sport, which is why I'm also not a fan of everyone gets a medal, because the whole point
everyone gets a medal is destroying, and to your point, putting parents that live vicariously through their kids' skill set for their own lack of self-esteem, and they're on the opposite side of the spectrum, but they're both massively detrimental.
Well, the fact of it is, one of the things you should learn through sport is that you don't always win, and you're not good at everything, and that's okay too. And you pick yourself up.
It's called truth.
It's fine. It's fine. You can still have fun. You can still enjoy it, and you don't have to win.
And by the way, Jen, I'm really enjoying that. Now I'm feel like we're just shooting the shit at a bar. I also think it's okay if they don't like the feeling of losing. To your point, as soon as I heard you say it's all right to, it's good to have fun, but guess what? I hate losing. Yeah. And that's fine too. We've demonized kids that are, it's not fine to do inappropriate things, but if you love competing so much that it hurts when you lost, we need to let kids breathe.
Yeah, I mean, everybody's different, right? And I had to sort of learn to manage my competitiveness a little bit after gymnastics, and I sort of avoided sport altogether. And then I started to go back and go to dance classes in my 20s, and I found myself I'm not at the front getting the attention all the time. And I'm like, this is not competitive. This is like a dance class for 25-year-olds. Just chill out and stand in the back and have a good time. So, it's sort of you got to figure out what makes you happy. But as far as, I certainly, I am competitive. I want to win in the market. But what I love specifically about marketing, and I would say not just marketing, but sort of branding more broadly, because I'm involved in the product process, all of it as well, is just this sort of the art and science of it, and the sort of ability to kind of understand how content, product will intersect with culture at a given moment, both from a gut understanding perspective, what's happening in the culture, but then also from a sort of data analytics and detail and kind of more scientific perspective. I like the bridge of those two things. And I have to say, I love being part of a team. I wish I'd done a team sport as a child. Gymnastics is intensely individualistic, and we pretend there's team medals, but no one cares about the team medal. And so I do really love being part of a team, and I would want that for my kids in sport, to be part of a team.
Speaking of kids, your mom of 4, is it kind of back to, you've had such an incredible kind of path in these 51 years, as you said. How much has that impacted your mothering style, and how much has mothering impacted your senior executive style?
Oh, that's not a 5-minute question. Wow. Yeah, I got 4 kids, and they're a wide range of ages, 19, 17, 5, and 3. So, I'm kind of mothering all stages right now.
Yes.
I don't even know how to answer that. I will answer from a parent perspective. One of the things I've had the good fortune to learn and understand is parenting kids of various ages. What you're really doing as a parent, and I say this to people with young children, is you're trying to obviously send good people into the world, but all of this is foundational for building a relationship with your children as adults, right? All the shit we worry about. Did 100%. He eat carrots before zucchini? Did he have an ice cream? Did he have, it doesn't matter, right? You want to build sort of trust with your child so that when they are adults, which is the predominant relationship in your life with your child, they will be adults. Do you have that? Do you communicate? Do you trust each other? Do they still want to talk to you? How many people do you know that are our age, I'm a little older than you, that don't even talk to their parents? That's a real tragedy. And so
the best thing with COVID is I just want to live with my parents. I love them so much on that. Now I got lucky because back to the old country, they were 20 when they had me. So we're friends. They're young. We're friends.
Yeah, they're young. But yeah, and so I'm in it for the long haul, which I guess informs the way I relate to all people and try to bring a bit of humanity and treat everybody with respect. I treated my children like they were grown-up adults that could make their own decisions from the time they were little. That didn't mean they couldn't, mess up. But, look, I've gone through layoffs, I've fired people. I have good relationships with all of those people, because you treat people with dignity and respect and humanity, and that's how you build a team. And I think I try to just be a real person, whether it's as a mom or as a leader or as a member of the team. And I allow the sort of full picture of who I am to be seen, which I think sets people at ease and allows them to do that as well. I mean, that's sort of how I don't know that I even think about it that much. It's just what I do.
In the last 3 minutes here, I'm desperately interested in your backdrop. You just have a whole lot going on there, and I'm fired up. I want to know everything right now. I feel like I need to go through it carefully. I feel like I can flip one of those things on eBay for a profit. Like, what's going on?
I have a lot of books. Some people ask me if it's like one of those fake backdrops, but this is actually my house. I'll say this. I am married. It's my second marriage, and I met my husband sort of later in life, and we were both avid readers. And so this is the sort of combined effort.
Combined collection.
43 years of reading, although we did have to kind of weed out the overlap, of which there was a lot. There was
hence the relationship. Makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, there was a lot of doubles of Philip Roth, for instance. So yeah, it's the combined efforts of a lifetime.
Have you read a lot during this time?
You know what? This is where I'm disappointed. I had like a run for the last year of reading a ton, and during this time I've not. No, which I'm sort of disappointed.
And do you believe that's because the nature of your job, whether it was travel or commute or things of that nature, actually was conducive to reading, and this new environment's less conducive?
That's a good point. I hadn't thought of it. I definitely read on planes, but I think my brain was just having trouble kind of focusing. It was so much upheaval at first. And I was reading sort of serious, intense books, and I would try to, and I was like, I just can't,
It was intensity on top of intensity.
I was like, no more. I'm going to watch some dumb television.
Has dumb television, has that been a great outlet for you? Have the escapism, do you use dumb television? Is it sport? Is it music? What have you used as escapism? During this time?
Exercise.
Oh, good for you.
Yeah. Dumb television, I also don't have much patience with. I'm not good with dumb content in general. So even when I kind of tune in, I am watching pretty serious, heavy stuff. But exercise has been my saving grace. It just creates sanity.
Well, listen, I'm a pretty good read of consumer behavior. I have a feeling you've just made an ungodly amount of fans. This was super exciting for me. I'm really glad we connected. I wish you nothing but the best. Continued success.
Thank you. That's kind. Thanks so much.
Yeah, of course.
Nice to talk to you. Bye.